Hello, everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with warrior from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've handled thousands of antiques over the years, but mirrors, they've always made me uneasy. You see, a table or a vase holds history, sure, but a mirror has witnessed it. It has reflected every fight, every kiss, every secret whispered in front of it. Sometimes when I'm cleaning them, I get this feeling like the glass remembers more than it should. This one came in on a wet, gray afternoon. A man in his 60s dragged it through the front door of my shop, rain dripping from his coat. It was a tall, silver-framed piece, heavy as sin, with intricate carvings of roses along the edges. He didn't want to sell it. He wanted to get rid of it. "I'll take whatever you'll give me," he said, his voice shaking a little. "Just don't bring it back." That's not a normal thing to hear. Usually, people haggle, try to prove the item's worth. He barely looked at the money I handed him. Before he left, he muttered something under his breath that I didn't catch. It sounded like a warning. I set the mirror against the far wall of the shop, next to a display of old dressers. The rain outside had picked up, the windows streaked with water, and the glass of the mirror seemed almost darker than it should have been, like it was holding onto the storm. The rest of the day was quiet. A few customers wandered in, but no one gave the mirror a second glance. It wasn't until I was locking up that I noticed it. In the reflection, the shop looked the same, except there was someone standing at the far end of the aisle. I turned fast, heart pounding, but the aisle was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was gone. At the time, I told myself it was the lighting, or maybe I was just tired. But that night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the image. The shape of a person who wasn't there. The way the glass seemed to hold on to it, like it wanted me to see. 2 nights later, I was working late. The shop had been empty for hours, the kind of silence that feels thick in your ears. I'd been cataloging a shipment of books in the back room when I heard something faint, a soft shuffle like a foot dragging across the wooden floor. I froze. The door was locked. No one else had a key. I stepped into the main room. The air colder than it should have been. My breath fogged just slightly, and my eyes went to the far wall. The mirror in the glass. The shop looked exactly as it should. But there it was again, the figure. A man-shaped shadow at the end of the aisle. Not clear enough to make out features, just presence. My throat went dry. I turned my head, and again, the aisle was empty. This time, I didn't look back, right away. I stood there for what felt like a full minute, my heart hammering, the only sound, the creak of the old building settling. Then, slowly, I let my eyes return to the mirror. The figure was closer. I swear to you, I didn't hear a sound, didn't feel the air move. But it was standing maybe 6 feet from where I was frozen. The outline had sharpened. Shoulders, a head, my hands were trembling when I grabbed a sheet from the counter and threw it over the glass. I didn't even wait to see if it covered the whole thing. I just bolted the door and left the shop lights on. Something I never do. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the silver frame, the way the dark seemed to pool inside the glass. And behind it, that thing taking another quiet step forward. The next morning, I unlocked the shop with a pit in my stomach. The sun was bright, but it didn't feel like it reached inside. The air still held that strange cold dot. The sheet I'd thrown over the mirror had slipped halfway to the floor. I didn't want to touch it, didn't want to see what was underneath. But leaving it there wasn't an option. I reached out, my fingers shaking, and pulled the cloth the rest of the way off. The glass was empty. Just my own pale, tired face staring back at me. No shadow, no figure. For a moment, I felt stupid. I even laughed, a short, dry sound that echoed too loudly in the quiet room. Maybe it had been my imagination, a trick of the light. But then I noticed something. There were faint smudges on the inside of the glass, not fingerprints, not streaks from cleaning. These were wider, flatter, like someone had pressed their palm. No. Their face against the other side of the mirror, trying to look out. I cleaned it. I told myself that's all it was, old glass and my nerves playing games. But over the next week, I couldn't stop glancing at it every time I passed. Sometimes the air around it felt heavy, like the atmosphere shifted slightly. Just in that one spot, I ended up moving it to the storage room, covering it completely in thick canvas. I told myself I'd sell it at auction, let someone else deal with it. But months have gone by, and I can't bring myself to list it. It's still back there, behind a locked door, and some nights, when I'm closing up, I hear that soft shuffle again. Not in the shop. Behind the storage room door. I don't know if it's waiting. I don't know what it wants. But I can tell you this, every mirror reflects something. I just don't think this one reflects us. It was late autumn when the music box came in, the kind of cold where the air smells like metal and the evenings fall silent earlier than they should. A young woman brought it, clutching it to her chest like she couldn't bear to touch it and couldn't bear to let it go, either. It was a delicate thing, carved mahogany, inlaid with mother-of-pearl, the kind of craftsmanship you don't see anymore. But there was no winding key, just a small hole where one should have been. She placed it on the counter carefully, as if afraid it might shatter. "My grandmother had it," she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. It plays by itself." I smiled, the way you do when someone tells you a ghost story you don't believe yet. "Probably just a stuck spring," I said, but she shook her head hard, the color draining from her face. "You don't understand. It plays different songs for different people." She didn't want any money for it. She just wanted it gone. As soon as the box was on the counter, she backed toward the door. Her hands were trembling. That night, I set it on one of the display tables and went about closing up. The shop was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels almost expectant. I found myself glancing at the box every few minutes, waiting for something I couldn't name. When I finally turned off the lights and headed for the door, a sound froze me in place. A single, delicate note. Then another. The music box was playing, soft and slow, like someone humming to themselves. I stood there in the dim light of the exit sign, every hair on my arms standing on end. There was no key, no way for it to wind itself. And yet, the melody swelled, gentle and mournful, filling the shop with a song I swear I'd heard before but couldn't place. I told myself I'd imagined it, that it was the wind, that it was anything but what it was. But when I stepped closer, I realized the truth. It was playing for me. I should have left it alone. I should have turned off the lights, locked the door, and forgotten it existed. But instead, I stepped closer, drawn by the sound. The melody was soft, almost a lullaby. It wasn't cheerful. It carried a weight, a sadness that settled into the walls. I knelt in front of the display table, staring at the little box. It was closed, the lid perfectly shut, but the sound poured from it like water. I reached out and touched the wood. The instant my fingers brushed it, the song changed. It wasn't subtle. One moment it was a slow, mournful tune. The next it was something lighter, brighter, the kind of music you'd hear spinning a child around in their grandparents' living room. I snatched my hand back. The melody held for a few seconds, then shifted again, deeper now, lower notes, slower tempo. My breath caught in my throat as I backed away. I turned to grab the phone, to record it, to prove it. But the moment I stepped out of reach, the music stopped. The silence hit like a physical thing. I stood there in the stillness, staring at the box, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then, from the far end of the shop, another sound, a hum, not from the box, from somewhere near the door. I spun around, but the shop was empty. The sound stopped as quickly as it had begun, leaving only my own ragged breathing. I forced myself to pick up the music box, hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. It was warm, faintly, as if someone had been holding it a moment before. I carried it into the back room and locked it in a cabinet, telling myself that would fix it that night. Lying in bed, I couldn't shake the melody from my head. I realized then why it had sounded familiar. It was the song my mother used to hum when I was a child, the one she sang to me the night before she died. I didn't open the cabinet for 3 days. The shop felt different with the box inside it, like the air carried a weight that wasn't there before. Customers would come in, look around, and leave quickly without really knowing why. On the 4th day, I finally unlocked the cabinet. The box sat there, perfectly still, perfectly silent. I almost convinced myself it had been a dream, but when I touched it, the wood was warm again. I couldn't keep it in the shop. Whatever it was, it didn't belong here. I wrapped it carefully in cloth and drove it to the edge of town, to a little bridge over the river where no one goes. The water below was black in the fading light. I didn't think. I just dropped it. There was no splash. The box hit the water and vanished without a sound. The ripples spread in perfect circles, then faded, leaving the surface still. I waited a long time, but the music never came. I told myself it was gone, that I'd done the right thing. But that night, around 3 in the morning, I woke to a sound. Soft, gentle, a single, delicate note floating through the dark dot. It wasn't in the shop. It wasn't in the house. It was inside my head. The melody was the same. The lullaby. My mother's voice behind it, faint as a breath. It's been months now. The box never came back, but sometimes, not every night, just some, I wake to that song. I don't tell anyone. Who would believe me? An old shop owner haunted by a music box that played his mother's lullaby. But when I hear it, when the notes fill that thin space between waking and dreaming, I don't feel fear anymore. I feel like someone is still holding me, and I don't know if that's comfort or warning. People assume the creepiest things I deal with are coffins or funeral portraits, but they're wrong. It's dolls, always dolls. Something about the way they imitate us, but never quite get it right, makes them feel wrong. This one came in on a bright spring morning. A young couple walked through the door, carrying a box between them, like it might break or bite if they weren't careful. They looked exhausted. The woman wouldn't look at the box at all, "We just want it gone," the man said, before I could even greet them. "Please, don't ask questions." They set it on the counter. Inside, wrapped in yellowed tissue paper, was a Victorian porcelain doll. Perfect white face, glassy blue eyes, and hair so fine it almost looked real. "Does it do something?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. The woman's answer was barely a whisper. "It watches them, the kids." She nodded, her hands twisting together so tightly her knuckles were white. "They didn't stay to fill out paperwork, didn't even want money. They just left, practically running out the door, as if afraid it would follow. I've seen a lot of dolls, but this one, I don't know. It had a weight to it. Not physical, it was light in my hands, but something. I locked it in a glass display case that afternoon. The eyes seemed to catch every bit of light, like it was waiting for someone to meet its gaze. That night, closing up, I walked past the display case and stopped dead. The doll was facing the wrong way. I'd set it forward in the box. I know I had. But now it was turned ever so slightly, head tilted toward the shop door. I told myself I'd bumped the case, that it had shifted on its own. But when I reached inside to straighten it, the porcelain felt warm, not from the shop, not from the sun, like it had been holding onto someone. 2 nights later, I was in the shop after hours doing inventory. The rain outside had that steady rhythm that makes old buildings creak in strange ways. I tried to ignore the display case, but my eyes kept drifting to it. The doll hadn't moved since that first night, or at least I thought it hadn't. Around midnight, the air shifted. That's the only way I can describe it. One moment, the room felt normal. The next, it was heavy, like every sound had been muffled under a blanket. I looked up. The doll's head was turned, not much. Just enough to face me, its glass eyes catching the dim light. I froze. My first thought was to grab it, toss it in the trash, but something in my chest told me not to touch it. The rain tapped against the windows. The silence in the shop was too thick, too watchful. And then I heard it. A soft giggle, a child's dotted, came from the back of the shop, faint but unmistakable. I stood there, every muscle locked, listening. The giggle came again, closer this time. "There you are," a whisper. Right behind me, I spun so fast I nearly fell over, heart slamming against my ribs. The shop was empty. Completely, utterly empty when I turned back to the case. The doll wasn't just looking at me anymore. Its tiny porcelain hand was pressed against the glass, like it wanted out. I backed away, not taking my eyes off it until I hit the wall. I left everything, the light, the ledger, the open cash drawer, and bolted out into the rain. That night, I dreamed of small hands tugging at my sleeves, of soft voices in the dark saying over and over, "Don't turn away, don't." Away. I didn't open the shop the next morning. I sat in my car out front for nearly an hour, staring at the door, trying to convince myself it had all been a dream, that maybe I'd fallen asleep at the desk and imagined it all. When I finally went in, the shop was exactly as I'd left it. Lights on, ledger open, cash drawer half pulled, and the doll, it was sitting perfectly straight in the case again. Hands folded neatly in its lap, eyes facing forward as if it had never moved at all. I stood there for a long time, waiting for something to happen, waiting for it to turn again, but it just sat there. I couldn't sell it. I couldn't throw it away. Every instinct screamed that whatever it was, it wouldn't let me. So I wrapped the entire display case in thick canvas, sealed it with rope, and dragged it into the back room. It's been almost a year now. I've never opened the covering. But sometimes, when the shop is closed and the street outside is dead, quiet, I hear it. The soft tick-tick of porcelain fingers tapping against glass. And sometimes, a giggle. I think about that couple often. The way they couldn't even look at it. The way they ran. What were they running from? Or maybe the better question is, what did they leave behind for me? There's a part of me, the practical, stubborn part, that tells me to smash it, burn it, scatter the ashes in running water. But every time I think of doing it, something stops me. Not fear, exactly. Something colder, like it's waiting, like it knows. Estate sales are a gamble. Most of the time, you end up with chipped teacups and dusty furniture. But every so often, you find something that feels heavier, like it carries more than just history. This ledger came from a house on the edge of town. The owner had passed away alone. No family claimed the belongings. The place smelled of old wood and something faintly sweet, like dried flowers left too long in a vase. The ledger was tucked in the bottom drawer of a roll-top desk, leather-bound, the kind that gets soft and smooth with age. No title, no markings, just a simple brass clasp that clicked shut with a sound that seemed louder than it should have been in that quiet house. I brought it back to the shop, thinking it would make a nice display piece. That evening, I sat down with a cup of tea and opened it. Inside were names, just names, written in neat, slanted handwriting, each one followed by a date. At first, I assumed it was a guest book, maybe a record of sales. But the date didn't line up with anything like that. Some were from 30 years ago, Some were only a few months old, and some were from the future. I flipped through page after page, my chest tightening with every name I didn't recognize. Near the middle of the book, one name stopped me cold. It was mine, written in that same careful hand, and next to it, a date. 3 weeks from that day. I sat there, staring at the ink until it blurred, my tea going cold beside me. I told myself it was a coincidence, a prank, something left behind by someone with a dark sense of humor. But when I closed the ledger, the clasp clicked shut again. That same too loud sound, and it felt, just for a second, like the book itself was aware. For the next few days, I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was nothing, just an old book with some names that happened to match mine. But every time I passed the desk where I'd set it, I felt it, that quiet pull, like it wanted me to open it again. On the 5th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat down, fingers hovering over the brass clasp, my stomach twisted in knots. When I finally opened it, the pages felt warmer than paper should. I flipped through slowly, more names, more dates. Then I saw one I recognized, not a friend, not a customer, a name I hadn't heard in 20 years. My brother's. He died in a car accident when we were teenagers. But here it was, written in the same slanted hand, the date matching the day he passed. My throat went dry as I turned another page. A name from town, someone I'd sold furniture to last month, their date. 2 days ago. I hadn't heard anything about them dying. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and searched their name. The obituary had been posted that morning. I dropped the phone like it burned. The room felt suddenly too small, too heavy. I flipped to my own page again. Still 3 weeks. I slammed the book shut and shoved it back into the drawer. But that night, lying awake, I couldn't stop hearing it. Not a sound exactly, but the idea of a sound. That too loud click of the clasp dot over like it was closing. Itself, like it knew I'd be back. I thought about burning it. That night, sitting in the kitchen with the lights off, the idea took root in my head and wouldn't leave. If I destroyed it, maybe whatever it was would stop. Maybe the date next to my name would mean nothing. But when I went to the shop the next morning, the drawer was already open. The ledger sat on the desk, waiting. I told myself I'd throw it in the fireplace. I didn't even open it. I just grabbed it and carried it out to the small burn barrel behind the shop. The sky was gray, the air sharp. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I tossed it in and lit the match. The flames caught quick, licking the leather, curling the edges of the pages. For a moment, I felt relief so strong it almost knocked me to my knees. Then the fire went out, just snuffed. No smoke, no embers. The ledger sat there, untouched. When I picked it up, the leather was cold. I didn't try again. It's been 2 weeks now. One left, if the book's right. I haven't opened it since. Can't bring myself to. But sometimes, when the shop's quiet, I hear that faint click, like a clasp closing. Sometimes I think I feel something else, too, just at the edge of my vision, like someone standing behind me, reading over my shoulder. I've been in this business long enough to know some things hold more than just age. Some things hold truth, and I can't shake the thought that the book doesn't predict anything. It just records that every antique shop has at least one thing that makes the owner uneasy. For me, it's trunks. Heavy, locked, sealed away things. They're like secrets with hinges. You never know what you're opening until it's too late. This one came from an auction. Nobody wanted it. Big iron bound, the wood so dark it looked almost black. The auctioneer said it had been in a coastal estate for over a century. The key was long gone. When it arrived at the shop, it took 2 men to carry it. Inside, even empty, it would have been heavy, but this thing felt like it was filled with stone. I left it in the center of the floor for days, waiting for the right time to pry it open. Customers walked around it, glancing at it like it was part of the building, not for sale. On the 4th evening, I stayed late with a crowbar. The shop was quiet except for the faint hum of the old heater. I knelt beside the trunk, running my fingers over the cold iron bands. They were slick, like condensation had formed, even though the air was dry. The first attempt didn't budge it. Neither did the second. The wood groaned under the pressure, a deep, low sound that made my stomach twist. When it finally gave, the lid lifted slowly, like something was resisting it from the inside. I braced myself for mothballs or old clothes, maybe papers, something mundane, but when the lid creaked open, the trunk was empty, completely, utterly empty. And then the smell hit me. Salt water, sharp and cold, like standing on a dock in the middle of winter. I heard it, next waves, distant, rolling, soft at first, then closer. Like the sea itself was moving inside the walls of the shop. I slammed the lid shut, my hands slick with sweat. The sound stopped. The smell lingered, and, for the first time in my life, I wished I'd left a secret locked. I should have gotten rid of it that night, called a junk service, hauled it to the dump. But I didn't. Something about it felt like it wouldn't let me. For the next 2 days, the shop didn't feel right. The air held a faint chill, and sometimes, when it was completely silent, I'd hear it. That soft, rolling sound, like water moving against wood. On the third night, I woke up from a dream I couldn't remember, with the smell of salt water filling my bedroom. The shop is 2 blocks away. The street was empty, the world still half asleep inside. The trunk sat in the center of the floor, exactly where I'd left it. The air was colder, wet somehow. My shoes left faint prints on the wood, like I'd stepped onto a dock slick with mist. When I touched the iron bands, they were freezing. I opened the lid again, still empty. But this time, the sound didn't wait. The waves came immediately, louder than before. Close enough that I could hear the foam hiss against an invisible shore. And then I heard something else, a voice, faint, just at the edge of the sound. I couldn't make out the words, but it was low, steady, like someone speaking through water. I leaned closer without thinking, my heart in my throat. The voice grew clearer, still muffled, but now I could almost understand it. My name. I slammed the lid shut so hard the wood splintered. The shop went silent, but the smell didn't fade. When I stepped back, I saw it for the first time. A faint line of wet footprints leading away from the trunk. They stopped halfway across the shop floor. Just stopped. I followed those footprints until they faded into nothing, my breath loud in the silence. The boards where they ended were dry to the touch. No puddles, no trace of water at all. I dragged the trunk into the back room that morning and threw a tarp over it, like hiding it would make it less real. It didn't. The smell clung to the shop for days. That sharp salt and cold air you can feel in your lungs. I haven't opened it since. Haven't dared. But sometimes, when the street outside is quiet and the shop is still, I hear it, not the waves. Any more knocking, soft, slow, like someone inside is trying to get out. I've thought about getting rid of it, but every time I try to move it now, it won't budge. 2 men carried it in. I can't shift it an inch by myself. And sometimes, when I stand close, I swear I hear that voice again. Not calling my name this time, whispering something else. I don't lean in to listen anymore. Whatever it is, whatever it wants, I think the trunk wasn't meant to be opened. Some secrets should stay sealed, rusted shut under layers of time. But I opened it, and I can't help but wonder if something else opened with it. Old typewriters sell surprisingly well. Writers like the weight of them, the sound of the keys, the way each letter leaves a mark you can feel under your fingers. But most of the ones I get are just dust and nostalgia. This one was different the moment I touched it. It came from a library that had been closed for decades. The building was being gutted, and someone found it shoved in a closet in the back. Rusted frame, chipped paint, keys stiff with age. But the paper, still in the roller, was pristine, white, like it had just been fed through. When I set it on the counter, the shop seemed to quiet around it. No hum of the heater, no creak of the floorboards, just stillness. That night, I stayed late, curiosity chewing at me. The metal arm struck the paper with a satisfying clack, and then another key moved on its own. The E slid forward, pressed down, and left its mark. I stepped back so fast I nearly tripped over the chair. One by one, the keys began to move. Not randomly, carefully, deliberately. When it stopped, I stared at the word forming on the page. Hello. My mouth went dry. My hands were shaking, but I reached forward, hit a single key. W. A pause. The H pressed itself down again. It wasn't random. It wasn't broken mechanics. It was answering me. I told myself it had to be something logical, some leftover tension in the springs. But when I stepped closer, I saw the letters again. Not just the word, the handwriting, the exact looping curve of the E. It looked just like his, my father's. I hadn't seen my father's handwriting in over 20 years. But there it was, staring back at me in sharp black ink. I told myself it was a coincidence, that old typewriters sometimes carry quirks in their letters, that it wasn't the same at all. I sat down, heart hammering, and typed a shaky line. Who are you? The keys paused for a moment, as if thinking. Then they moved, slow and deliberate. You. No dot. My hands were sweating. I typed faster. Dad. The response came immediately. No hesitation in the letters. Yes. I pushed away from the table so hard, the chair screeched against the floor. My breath came fast and shallow. The shop felt small, suddenly, like the walls had shifted closer. I stood there, staring at the page, at that single word, wanting to believe, and terrified that I did. Finally, I reached out again. Where are you? A pause this time. The sound of the keys softer, like the machine itself was careful. Behind you. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I didn't turn. I couldn't. Every part of me screamed not to look. I stayed frozen until the shop's clock struck midnight, and the sound snapped me back. When I finally forced myself to glance over my shoulder, the room was empty. I ripped the paper from the typewriter and shoved it in a drawer, slamming it shut. The shop was silent again, but my heart wouldn't slow down. The typewriter sat there on the table, the keys still faintly trembling, like fingers twitching after a long sleep. I didn't touch the typewriter again for a week. I kept it covered under a heavy cloth in the back of the shop, but I could still feel it there, like a presence lingering in the corner of every room. One night, when the street outside was silent and the shop smelled faintly of dust and rain, I gave in. I pulled the cloth away and fed a new sheet of paper through. My fingers hovered over the keys. I didn't even know what I wanted to ask. Finally, I typed, "Are you really him?" The pause this time was long enough that I thought maybe it was over, that the thing inside it had gone quiet. Then the keys moved. Does I to matter? My throat tightened. I typed slower this time. Careful. What do you want? The answer came in 3 words. To finish talking. I stared at the page until the letters blurred. My father and I hadn't ended on good terms. There were things I'd never said, questions I'd never asked. For one fragile second, I wanted to believe it was really him, reaching through ink and steel. But when I looked closer, I saw something that made my stomach twist. The last word, talking. The G was off, a fraction sharper. Hand, whoever, whatever, was on the other side. It wasn't him. I shoved the paper into the drawer with the first one and locked the typewriter away in a crate. I told myself I'd sell it or destroy it, but I haven't. Some nights, when the shop is closed and the world outside is quiet, I hear the faint click-clack of keys from the back room, slow, patient, finishing the conversation without me. Photographs, our memories trapped in paper. That's why I like them. They hold people as they were, moments untouched by time. This one came in a frame lot from an estate sale. Just an ordinary black and white portrait, the kind you see in antique stores everywhere. A family of 4, mother, father, 2 children standing stiffly in front of a farmhouse. Something about it made me pause. Maybe the way none of them were smiling. Maybe the way the farmhouse in the background seemed to lean like it was sagging under a weight you couldn't see. I cleaned the glass and set it on the display shelf. That night, as I locked the door, I glanced at it one last time and froze. The boy, the younger child, maybe 6 or 7, was looking at me. I know how that sounds. It was a photograph. But in the moment before I turned the lights out, I Would have sworn his eyes were no longer on the camera. I shook it off, told myself it was the angle, a trick of the light. But when I came in the next morning, the picture was different. Not much, just off. The family was in the same place, the farmhouse behind them. But the boy's head was tilted slightly, and his eyes were definitely on me now. I picked it up, hands clammy, and stared. Old photos can warp. I told myself, heat, time, humidity, things shift. That's all it was. But when I flipped the frame over, the backing was perfectly sealed. No way to open it without breaking the paper. And there, faint in pencil on the back of the frame, were 4 words. Don't let him out. I told myself to throw it out. Just take the whole frame and toss it in the dumpster out back. But when I tried to move it, my hands wouldn't close around the wood. They shook so hard I almost dropped it. That night, I stayed later than I meant to. The shop felt wrong in a way I can't explain, the kind of wrong that seeps into your bones. Every time I passed the shelf, I felt the boy's eyes on me. Around midnight, the lights flickered. Just once, but long enough for the shadows to shift. When they came back on, the photograph had changed again. The family was still there. The farmhouse still leaned in the background. But now, the boy wasn't with them. He was standing closer to the camera, closer to me, my breath caught in my throat. I backed away slowly, every instinct screaming not to look away. And then I heard it, a faint scratching sound, like fingernails on glass. It was coming from inside the frame. I grabbed the picture and slammed it face down on the counter. The scratching stopped. The shop went silent. That's when I noticed something else. The faint outline of a handprint, small, pressed against the inside of the glass. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the shop with the picture face down on the counter, afraid to turn it over, afraid to throw it away. At dawn, I finally worked up the courage to flip it. The boy was back with his family, all of them standing exactly as they had in the original photo, except now, every one of their faces was looking straight at me. I wrapped the photo in thick brown paper that same morning and shoved it into a locked cabinet in the back room. Out of sight, out of mind. At least, that's what I told myself. But sometimes, when the shop is quiet and the only sound is the hum of the old heater, I hear it. That faint, steady scratching. Not loud, just enough to know it's there. I've thought about burning it, smashing the frame. But every time my hand hovers over the cabinet lock, my chest tightens, like something inside is waiting for me to make the wrong move. And I keep thinking about those words on the back of the frame. Don't let him out. It feels less like a warning and more like a plea. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder who wrote it. The parents in the picture. Someone who found it before me. Or maybe the boy himself, trapped in that frozen moment, begging me to keep the door shut. I don't know. All I know is this. Every time I walk past that cabinet, I can feel a pair of small eyes following me through the wood. And lately, I've started to dream of the farmhouse. It leans the same way it does in the picture. The windows are dark, and every time I wake up with the same cold thought sitting heavy in my chest. One day, I'm going to see him standing outside my shop door, not in the photo. Here, rocking chairs are supposed to be comforting. The gentle sway, the creak of wood, they belong in quiet corners and warm rooms. But there's something unsettling about one moving when no one's sitting in it. This chair came from a farmhouse clear out in the country. The family selling it didn't want to keep a single thing from the house. When I asked why, the woman's voice shook when she answered, "It doesn't stop at night." I thought she meant the sound of the house settling, or maybe some old plumbing. But when they unloaded the chair into my shop, I understood. The wood was worn smooth on the arms, the kind of wear that comes from decades of hands resting there. But the seat itself, it was cold, not just from the winter air, a kind of cold that felt like it came from inside the wood. I put it near the front window, a harmless display piece. That first evening, I stayed late, balancing the books. The shop was quiet, except for the ticking of the clock. Then the sound started, soft, slow, the faint creak of wood shifting. I looked up. The chair was moving. Not much, just the barest back and forth sway. But the shop was still. No breeze, no draft. I stood frozen, pen halfway to the paper, watching it rock in that steady, patient rhythm. The sound was gentle, almost soothing, almost until it stopped, and the seat pressed down, just slightly, as if something invisible had settled into it. I told myself it was the wood settling. That was the lie I clung to as I turned off the lights and locked the shop that night. But when I came in the next morning, the chair wasn't where I'd left it. It had shifted 3 feet to the left. No drag marks, no scuffs on the floor. Just as if it had decided to move and the world had stepped aside to let it. I pushed it back into place and told myself I wouldn't think about it again. But that evening, when the last customer left and the street outside went quiet, the sound started again. That slow, deliberate creak, like the wood was breathing. I stayed behind the counter, heart in my throat, watching. The chair rocked twice, then stopped. The seat pressed down, just a fraction. The air in the shop changed, heavier, somehow, as if someone had stepped in from a cold wind and stood just out of sight. Hello. My own voice sounded too loud, too human. The chair answered with a long, drawn-out creak. I don't know why I did it. Curiosity, maybe. Or the same reckless pull that makes you open a door you know should stay shut. I stepped closer. The air around it was colder. My breath fogged faintly in front of my face. The chair rocked once, slow and deliberate. Then it stopped, and the sound that followed wasn't wood at all. It was a sigh, soft, low. Right at my ear. I stumbled back so fast I nearly knocked over a display table. Innocent as a piece of furniture should be, but the air stayed cold for a long time after, like whoever had been sitting there hadn't left. I moved the chair into the back room the next day. I told myself it was just a piece of wood, nothing more. But even under the tarp, even shoved into the corner where I couldn't see it, the shop felt occupied. Every time I walked past that door, I felt the faintest shift in the air. Not cold. Exactly. More like a tension. It's been 6 months. I haven't sold it. Haven't sat in it. But some nights, when the street outside is dead quiet and the shop's clock ticks loud in the dark, I hear it, that slow, patient creak. Sometimes it's followed by that soft sigh. Sometimes it isn't. I don't know why the family got rid of it. I don't know who sat there before me, or why they won't get up now. But there's a part of me, the part that stays awake too late, the part that listens when I should turn away, that wonders if some chairs remember the people who loved them most, and maybe, just maybe, they remember the people who died in them, too. I don't go near it anymore. Not because I'm scared it won't,